Hello and welcome to Cheshire Audio. Now, excuse the fleece today, but it was -5 when I came in this morning, and I'm still trying to get the blood going. We're a bit strange in the UK. If it's really cold, we use centigrade. If it's really warm, we use Fahrenheit. I'm actually thinking about it. If it's we're measuring a long distance, we do it in miles. If we're measuring a very, very short distance, we do it in millimetres. It's all very confusing. Anyway, yes, what was I talking about? Today, what I want to talk about is biwiring. Not as prevalent as it used to be. I think it was a big thing sort of, how long ago was it, 15 years ago or so. It got to the point where speakers, if they weren't bi-wired or bi-wire compatible, people didn't want them. It got really sort of quite a major thing. I was always a bit dubious about it, to be fair. I never quite saw never really saw any improvements particularly. Although there are improvements to be had with it, and I'll sort of try and explain that because that's completely contradictory, but you'll see what I mean. As we go through, you'll see what I mean. Let's talk about biwire itself and what it's all about. I mean, most speakers have obviously bass and treble, sometimes bass, mid and treble, whatever. It'd be a two-way or a three-way. And the crossover that sort of splits up the signal to treble bass, treble mid bass, whatever. They tend to be all on the same board, and there's certain signal paths that are shared. Sometimes there's components that are shared as well. And the theory was, because it was all based on theory, I think, was that you're going to get interference between bass, treble. There's going to be sort of clouding issues going on, and I think the best sort of vaguely scientific explanation for that, which was probably the only one that really made any sense, but even then it was a bit suspect, is that with a speaker driver, particularly the bass unit, and it's moving in and out. Well, if you take the drive unit out of a speaker and you move the cone in and out and put a meter on it, it actually creates a voltage. And one of the big theories about biwiring was that because the driver is moving, it's being driven, but it's also putting information back into the circuit, which is, I think they call back EMF, and that this information would sort of go into the crossover and go up through the treble circuit and all this sort of slightly fractionally timed behind everything else. So it's going to blur everything, and it kind of makes sense. So what they did to make a speaker biwireable is cut all the links between bass, treble, mid-range, whatever. So you just have a circuit that was treble, circuit that was bass. And on the back of the speaker you would have, and why I chose a heavy speaker for this, I don't know. So on the back of the speaker you would have, get the light on there, treble at the top, bass at the bottom, and so that you can use it for single wire, there's little links between, so the positives are both linked together, the negatives are both linked together. I'm going to put that down. So there you got so if you had single wire cable, you can run it. If bi-wire cable, you just take the little links out. You bi-wired, and it seemed like a great idea. Personally, I never heard a difference. It's very difficult actually to listen to single wire versus bi-wire on an even plane because there's so many other things going on here. And the reason I don't think it makes a difference, or at least I don't think it makes a difference with sort of mid to high end equipment. At the budget end, the jury's still out on that one a little bit. I think on really budget kit, I think possibly the back EMF thing might be more of an issue, because if a speaker's not being driven that well, it has a tendency to do its own thing more, so it's more likely to be sticking information back up. Possibly, this is my theory, which is probably wrong, and people shout at me in comments like they always do. So it could well be in more budget equipment, yeah, possibly. There might be something going on there, but in sort of mid-range and higher end stuff, I can't see it making a difference. But there are differences. I'm contradicting myself again. And I think what the differences are to do with, I think the main one is that to run bi-wire, and I've done one of my dodgy diagrams, well, dodgy drawings, just to sort of further explain what we're doing here. Right, 3 different configurations of cable here. Normally, you have a cable like this, which would be your normal stereo cable, 2 plugs, 1 cable, or two core cable, 2 plugs. So that's your normal single wire cable that pretty much everybody has. For biwiring, either you'd use 2 of these per side, or you would buy a 4 core cable, which
still have some kicking about, actually. Let's actually get cracking on a little bit now. I'll show you the other end, because the other end's actually a bit more obvious. Like a 4-core cable, so this has got 4 connections within one cable. That was quite good, actually, that cable. That was, believe it or not, that's Autofon did this. Autofon SPK 200. That was a really good cable. But specifically for Biwire, I had 2 thicker cores for bass, 2 thinner cores for treble. Anyway, I'm off on a tangent. So yeah, so with that, in this situation with like the Autofon, you would configure it like this. You'd have 4 at both ends, or if your amplifier didn't have 4 connections, because quite often amplifiers would have 2 sets of connections per channel. I'll go back to that in a sec, because there's various reasons for that as well. Or if you hadn't got that, then you would do it like this. So you'd have 2 connections at one end and 4 at the other. So you'd have each plug, these 2 plugs would have 2 cables going into them each. So you need a decent quality plug that would take a heavy cable. This is the best way of doing it, actually, but for Biwire. This not so much. And I think there's a lot of confusion about Biwire and how it, and what the requirements for it. Because time and time again, I have people saying to me, well, I can't Biwire with my amplifier because it's only got 2 terminals left and right, it's not got 4. And I think there's a slight misconception that if your amplifier has got extra terminals, so if it's got speakers A, speakers B, or it's just got 4 outputs, because some just have 4 outputs, that those extra speaker outputs are connected to another amplifier inside. They're not. All that happens is they link together inside, sometimes via a switch as well. So you'll have the main set unswitched, the secondary set will be on a switch, or the whole thing's switched and you can switch between one or the other or have both on. And you don't really want, if you are wiring like, you don't really want it being the extra plugs and the connections within and everything else. You're better to do it with heavy gauge plugs straight in, so there's less connections, and it's basically doing the same thing as is actually happening inside the amplifier. Because what you've got is a single stereo amplifier driving 4 terminals instead of 2 if it's got the extra ones, and it's just it confuses people a lot, and I don't think I'm particularly helping really with this. I'm not really explaining it very well. What I think goes on with Biwiring, and why quite often it does sound better, is that if you imagine single wiring, you've got a cable like this, and then perhaps you buy exactly the same cable in its bi-wire form, because I think people like QED used to do that. There'd be a single wire version, a bi-wire version. You buy the 4-core version. Of course it sounds better. You've got twice the cross-section of cable. You're basically using a heavier gauge cable. The biggie, actually, and interestingly, I think this is where we come under tweakery. I think in the title I've got sort of includes a little bit of tweakery. Where you can improve things, and the reason that Biwiring improves things is going right back to where we started. Terminals here, if you want to Biwire, you take out the link. Those links are a big backward step sound quality wise. They're usually, I mean, funnily enough, these aren't too bad on the fines, but usually you get these sort of brass coloured, it's usually really cheap metal with a coating on it, just to look pretty. And they're just not particularly good conductors, and they're not, you know, if you take them out and just get 2 short bits of cable, perhaps the cable that you've got from your main speakers, and just use a little binding post there and use that instead, it's way better. So that's something else. Biwiring, yeah, it's better, but once you take these links out, you're at an advantage. You've got double the cable, so you're at an advantage. I mean, there are manufacturers, if I can do this without dropping the speaker, there are manufacturers, Nordos do, specific little short links. The idea is that you'll put one under the terminal there, so one in there and one goes under like that to link. So that's a really good high-end cable, just to try and simplify things here. I'm going to put it down again. A lot of high-end sort of speaker manufacturers have already ditched Biwiring because they've found that their speakers sound considerably worse if they've got the Biwiring plugs on the back. They're much better if they're single wired. I think actually Kudos was one of the first ones to do this. They actually offered bi-wire versions and single wire versions. But basically they said, unless you really are going to bi-wire, well, actually they didn't say that. this is another subject, and this is a subject for the next video. If you're going to buy amp, then yes, it's worth doing it. If you don't think about biwiring, just go single wire because it's always better. And they're right, really. I think rather than get you doubling up on your cable, just get a better cable or whatever. So it's a bit, yeah, it was a bit of an oddity. It sort of came and went. It's still sort of lingering, and I still get people asking about it. But I just wanted to sort of talk through my thoughts on it, really. Yes, it may have a little bit of an effect, but I think once you get into decent kit, not so much. But I think also the reasons why it apparently makes a difference is quite a lot to do with the fact that the speakers have been converted to be-by-wire, and you're trying to get over that, plus then you've got extra cable. So it's a bit of a minefield, really. Like I say, I want to take this one further, because you've got single wire, bi-wire, then you've got bi-amp, and then you've got active. These are all different ways of connecting speakers to amplifiers, and I wanted to sort of talk about bi-amplifying, and I wanted to talk about active to a degree, which are a completely different thing. So anyway, I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to go and sit by the radiator. I'll see you in a future video. Thanks for all the likes, subscribes, etc. Still planning the competition. I've just not had a chance to do it, but anyway, I'll bring that one up soon, and we'll get that sorted. Going to be a music-based question, I think. I think I know what the question is. Anyway, thanks for watching. I will see you in a future video.